I'll disagree because I love chess and I want to see the experienced players come back. Armageddon would be a fitting way to separate these great warriors. But in the meantime, Levon, not looking too optimistic on the camera, but he employs the Italian game yet again, Robert. And take it away. What do you think of this third appearance of this opening?
It feels like I'm receiving an opening lesson from these two because Levon Aronian keeps trotting out the Italian game. And Vincent Keymer, he retreats his bishop back to a7. So that means b4 or d4 don't come with a tempo against a bishop on c5. So Vincent, I think he learned his lesson from that earlier contest where Levon was able to put some serious pressure on him, open some files, take over the 7th rank. Vincent, he wants to be stable. But if I'm also being honest, that sometimes, especially for younger players who don't have as much experience, they think that in order to secure the draw, they have to quote unquote play for a draw. And that means you're not always playing objectively. So for Vincent Keymer, solid game with the black pieces, simply pushing pawns, developing, castling. I can't fault a single decision that he's made. And for Levon Aronian, he's going back to the tried and true plan. He brings his knight out to d2. His knight will wrap back around to f1. His knight then will venture forward to g3, or we could see a repeat of that earlier game where that knight somehow made its way to g4 before it was captured. So it's Vincent Keymer on the move. One common idea in this position, in fact, it's been essayed by Levon himself in some fabulous games, is knight to g4 to put immediate pressure on the f2 pawn. And the real point behind this isn't going for a one-move look that. It's that black often wants to put the king in the corner and push the pawn to f5. So that's a riskier variation. If Vincent hadn't won the first game, perhaps he would have gone down that line. But instead, we see that Vincent continues to play solidly. I expect the bishop to come out to e6, offering the trade. I think that Levon, he can confidently bring his knight back out to g3, as he did earlier in today's action. He can also retreat his bishop. We saw players choosing that option to escape any trades. But for Levon, he's going to need to take risks. You can't just play this calmly and patiently, because as it stands, the position isn't much in it, at least not for now, though there are double pawns, and perhaps long-term, that could be something that white goes after. Queen b3 is always met by queen c8, so that's not immediately an issue. But David, as we dive into this position and you look at how the opening stage has gone, what do you make of it? Do you think that Vincent is the least bit unhappy with his current position?
I think he's fine with it. Yes, the black pawn structure is messier than my office after spilling my drink, but other than the double black e-pawns, I think he's okay with it. I mean, he's got experience here. I actually sat next to Vincent at the European Team Championships a few months ago, where he played a couple of games with this structure, and he defended very ably there. So, interesting start to this game. Very quiet. And Robert, as you mentioned, we're learning a lot about the Italian, the kind of maneuvers, the placement. Third Italian, but the third totally different type of structure position that we're being treated to. So, this is going to simmer for a long time, I feel. And it's just about whether Vincent's nerves hold up long term. Levon on the camera, I've got to say, this is the most negative body language I've seen from him for a long, long time. Maybe just not enjoying this third Italian as much as he was the previous two.
And these are long days for the players. Let's not overlook how much work they're putting in, because they prepare for their matches. They end up playing 4 rapid games, then an Armageddon 5th game, and now into a grand final reset. And these are not easy days for these top players. Sure, they've played classical chess and played 8-hour games, so they know what it's like, but so many different positions swirling in their head. It's not simple to just forget about what's just transpired and now focus on your next steps. But I think it's clear from the white perspective, the next steps are about putting pressure on some of black's loose pawns in the position. And so for Vincent, the question becomes, how do you actually defend all of your weaknesses? A move like rook to b8 does not look particularly appealing, but maybe, David, it's necessary.
Yeah, it might well be necessary. And as we've kind of shown in previous games, sometimes you have to just take the passive route. You just have to defend something. I see queen to d6 as well, just setting a nice little trap. Don't take my pawn on b7. Please don't. But then if you do, rook f to b8 traps Her Majesty there. So yeah, there are kind of creative ways to defend things, and there we go. It's actually on the board. Queen to d6. But yeah, rook to b8 as well. And white just continues to line up. I've jokingly, Robert, mentioned the kind of age difference, the battle of the generations, but yeah, such a long day. Guaranteed that the players are feeling it, especially Levon and Sasha Grishuk right now. But okay, maximum pressure here. 3 minutes up, Levon. I think I am actually going to say, I'm going to back my prediction. I'm going to say Armageddon in this one. I just have a feeling that Levon will ask a question or two. Vincent might get nervous. It's the type of position it's really hard to find easy natural moves. And we might get treated. Who knows? To more chess.
Okay, well, Levon, he loves rap, he loves jazz, he loves improvising, but how is he going to improvise in this game? I'm just looking at the setup. It's very solid, but then my eyes go off the board to the clock. 9+ minutes for Levon, and a huge decision there from Vincent. He pushes his pawn forward. That makes the queen on b3 a bit happier because it stares into black's position. What do you make of this latest decision? Sure, pawn trades can happen on doubling black's pawns, but I feel like now we're seeing some imbalances.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing imbalances, and this really is reminiscent of what Vincent did a couple of games ago, earlier in the day at least, in the Italian. He pushed a pawn to d4, he locked it up, cut the board in half, we described it as, and ultimately, things didn't go his way. So, a trade of pawns, it was based on concrete reasons. He just wanted to undouble. He's kind of done that by force. The black e-pawns no longer as much of an eyesore as they were earlier, but he's fixed the structure. Now the white rooks, if assuming they get blocked on the e-file, they might just switch over to the c-file. A semi-open line has appeared over there, and hence why Vincent's trying to fight on the other flank. The black knight now coming into f4. I can see why he's done this, Robert. It's very appealing. At least he has a clear-cut plan now, unlike maybe 2 moves ago. But long-term, it's very, very committal. And for someone with commitment issues like me, I'm not sure I would play d4, but it's definitely kind of trying to solve black's problems by brute force.
And as chess players, we like to associate to known positions. Isn't this a bit familiar? Doesn't this remind you of the Armageddon game where Levon sacrificed a rook for a knight on f3 to expose his opponent's king? Rook takes f3 is something that I would be scared of. I'm looking at this position. Rook takes f3 for me is automatic and bullet, but this is a move that is responsible. You are going to give a rook for a knight, and this b7 pawn is under attack later. So can you go straight on for your attack? I'm not so sure. This requires calculation.
Robert, I think rook takes f3 would be a masterstroke, if not for the fact that white would ignore it and take on b7 first. And he's played it, but queen takes b7, hits the rook in the corner, hits the knight. Yes, you're a knight down temporarily with white, but you counterattack and black's queenside just collapses. Levon Aronian, the fact he's paused indicates that he's calculating this. But wow, the most confusing thing for me, Robert, here, the evaluation bar still in the center. Black's just sacrificed a rook for knight. Controversial stuff. Black's 2 rooks are both hanging. Black's knight is hanging, and it's equal. Explain this. How is this level? Vincent, with under 5 minutes, has to calculate his way through this total mess.
And apparently black has multiple moves, because we usually see that blue arrow appear telling us when there is just one decision. So because I know there are multiple, I'm just going to suggest some things. Knight b4? Can I attack your rook? Because if you take this rook in the corner, my rook slides back. But I'm more concerned if you take this rook first, because then the rook in the corner is still under attack. So I just don't see the exact endpoint, and I'm worried now that black bit off more than he could chew because he's not getting his material back. Right? You may get some pressure against the white king, but to beat down material, that weighs on the mind.
It really does, and as well as the computer's evaluation, I must say the bit that's tripping me up here. Why did Vincent take on f3? Surely he examined queen takes b7 and had an idea, had an answer prepared up his sleeve. But why take on f3 and then pause? Unless it wasn't on his radar at all, Robert. Do you think he's missed something? just a long think suddenly after he being the one to choose going in for this concrete jungle of variations. There's also ideas like pawn to e5 for white. You can throw in at any moment, just kind of use the white queen on the diagonal back to take a rook on f3. It's just pure chaos. And Vincent, being 4 minutes down on the clock here is going to be extremely significant. I think even if he finds the best move, whether that's knight b4 or another, I think he's in for some trouble now. This is a Levon type of position, talking about styles. It's messy, dynamic, right up his street.
And the evaluation bar means nothing here. Neither player knows. There's so much chaos happening. I mentioned Levon Aronian's affinity for rap and jazz. He also loves traditional classical stuff, classical music, and older movies. So in this type of position, he's heading us back to the Romantic era. Let's give up a knight on one side. Let's go for attack on the other. And Vincent plays knight to b4, and the evaluation doesn't change. So my question, David, is if I take this rook on f3, the biggest question of all is what is Black's follow-up? Because knight takes rook, queen takes other rook with check. There comes the exclamation point. I guess with more depth, the engine realizes that this is a great move and perhaps the only move that kept the EVA bar not just in Black's favor, but remotely near the center. Dave, what's the follow-up here?
I guess the black rook is hit. You have to move it or defend it. Rook to f8 comes to mind, but I really don't like the idea of wow, queen to f8, blue arrow. I was about to say, I don't like the idea of allowing white to play e5, hit the queen with tempo, so get her out the way. She's a really agile piece. She's been doing her Pilates. She's queen to f8. She's going to hit f3, defend a8, defend b4, multi-purpose piece. And the black knight, also really annoying to deal with this hit on the white rook. But it's not obvious, Robert, this blue arrow move, queen to f8. I'm going to say that's difficult for any human.
Extraordinarily difficult. And you see that Vincent is dropping to below 2 minutes on the clock. He found it. He just played queen to f8, and this might have been process of elimination, but it is a brilliant retreat. It didn't get the 2 exclamation points, just 1, so I can take care of that. I see what's happening here. There is a retreat that defends a rook in the corner, but also it attacks. So I'm going to give it these exclamation points. It's got 3, in fact. But in all seriousness, this is such a tremendous retreating move. Look what this queen is doing. Protecting the rook, protecting the knight, attacking this loose pawn, and you may find the white king in a checkmating net. This is just a fantastic, fantastic retreating move from Vincent Keymer.
Wow, yeah, just incredible. Retreating is difficult at the best of times, especially if you've sacrificed something to take a timeout, to just calmly retreat the queen. And now because you're defending everything, you're holding the fort, you have the luxury of time next move. I'm assuming white saves his rook, Levon. White's rook on c2 is attacked, the pawn on d3 is attacked. The most natural move would be rook to d2. But then the other black knight could come in and, wow, he goes aggressive. Rook takes c7 here. And, I mean, all bets are off, Robert. I'm failing to predict every single move, it feels like, at this point. But suddenly the white queen is hit and the pawn is dropping. Is this the start of the domino effect? Is white's position collapsing as well?
My head is on a swivel. I'm looking left, I'm looking right. I'm trying to figure out, is it f2 and f3 that are a problem? Is it this rook on b8? It's loose, so the queen has to stay attached to it. Is it the time where Levon has about 6 minutes and Vincent is down under 2? Even approximately, get out of here. This is just an absolute mess. And for Vincent Keymer, it's the $15,000 for winning the division. It's also that spot, that coveted spot in Division 1 in the second leg. He wants that more than anything. And he also wants his f3 pawn more than anything because he's teaming up against it. I don't know what white should do next, but I do see that black has compensation for the sacrifice material.
Yeah, huge compensation. If white is careless, we've seen it before multiple times actually in this match. If the knights start jumping, this could just end in checkmate. White's king is in the firing line purely because of the weak pawn structure. And yeah, I agree with this featured chat. Keymer is so good, but also look now below our boards. I've got to say, Robert, 98 and 99% accuracy in such a wild game, that is a real kind of indicator of how informed both of these players are right now. 98, 99%, it's possible if you have great opening preparation, if it's maybe a kind of position where the difference between move 1 and move 5 isn't so great. But here, they're finding only moves. Vincent's been walking a narrow tightrope, yet he's still up at 99%. This is another level. Knight e5, brilliant move, but he has to back it up now. Rook to c1. How does he continue? There is a threat. Queen takes b8 would simplify the equation here in white's favor, so he has to be careful. He has to avoid the opponent's ideas.
And how do you avoid it? Do you bring your king off the last rank? Do you scurry on over with your rook to one of these squares? And David, what I've always found fascinating is that when you analyze games and you think there's no difference in where you move a piece, and then the end just one is losing and one is winning for some unknown reason. And we see an only move now for white, knight to g3, not knight d2 to protect your loose pawn. It said knight to g3, offering a trade of knights, not queens. And there actually are some threats in the position if the knight on h5 were to go. Rook takes g7 check because the black queen is tied to too many pieces at the same time. It's overloaded. That's a concept that everybody should look up or study if you already know it. But knight g3, this is trying to trade off one of black's most important attackers and defenders.
Yeah, I think actually, the more I look at it, very findable move. This one's logical. You need to bring a piece to defend, but also, as you mentioned, Robert, counterattack, remove black's defender. But calculation, of course, required. I'm assuming black plays knight takes f3 in that position. Check. The pawn will be hanging, and then it's like a 1 in 3 lucky dip. The white king can choose one of 3 different squares. You might get mated if you step to the wrong one, and that's why Levon Aronian, he's trying to delve into that forest of complications. Yeah, I mean, the players, in their mind, we've all been there. This type of position, no evaluation, but they have no idea. They think they're doing well, they might think they're in trouble, but ultimately it's just looking for good moves, surviving, preventing the opponent's threats. So knight g3, I think it's going to be played, but this is only the beginning, Robert.
It is, and this arrow is only the beginning because it tells us that this is white's only move to keep equality, and black may have an only move on his end to keep equality. And it can't continue in this manner, so that is why Dave and I are so impressed with the accuracy. And just as I'm about to say that, a mistake from Levon, that was clear. He put his queen on a square. The engine immediately hated it. And then the queen went to f6, but the engine was down to like -3.5. Now back to -2. Ignore the evaluation. It's helping us know that black actually is doing well, but the players, they don't know it. Vincent is down to just a minute and change on the clock. And so, David, if he is not accurate here and he allows the white king to escape, then Levon is going to have that extra material.
Wow, now the bar has gone crazy and there are so many tempting moves. Let's do some quick counting though. Black has got 3 attackers, the queen and the 2 black knights, 3 attackers. White, I'm going to say only 2 defenders, the white queen and rooks, cut off on the wrong side of the board. So where is the killer blow? I'm looking at mating patterns. Knight g5, I actually wanted to highlight that earlier. That would have come into play in another variation. That sets up a nasty 3-move checkmate idea of the black queen coming down to the f3 square, replacing the knight, the black knight jumping in, and some checks leading to mate. But is there anything better? That's the question. The computer says it's totally busted for white here. We said it. There's going to be a turnaround. Robert, do you see any other tempting attacking ideas? Vincent, 26 seconds. He drops his knight back the other way.
What a move. He's just retreating. He's giving up his knight seemingly for free, but it's because he's going to land his queen on f3 with check and then recapture this knight on f3. That's not the end of the story. There are all sorts of ideas going against the black king, but Vincent has calculated them all. 26 seconds on his clock, but objectively a winning advantage according to the engine. He's just playing with purpose. Every single turn has been a good choice from Vincent.
Yeah, we have to remember he's the exchange down. He's 2 points down, but it's about the quality of the pieces. Black's pieces so strong. Black's rook even doing a great job on the other side of the board. The D pawn, watch out for that to run. I mean, if white survives, that's the first question. Levon suddenly, I don't think he realizes how bad his position is. Understandably, it's just a total mess in his eyes, but it's going to dawn on him now in a must-win situation that I think at the very minimum, Robert, the white's king is so open that Vincent will be able to bail out with perpetual check if necessary. But yeah, of course, he'll want to win the game if he can. Queen to f3 is just unstoppable. No way to prevent that move. I think he just has to bite the bullet. Take that black knight on h5 and say, prove it, mate. Checkmate me. And Vincent will try to do so, of course. What a game, though, it's been so far. And I love that feature chat. Yes, Levon has the Alekine's gun, the 2 rooks and queen lined up, but unfortunately on the wrong side of the board.
And normally that has to stare at something. It's staring at nothing, right? The C8 square is not valuable. So White's pieces, they're not operating on squares and files that you need them to be. If you could bring this rook to the 7th rank somehow, then you start feeling better about your chances going after the Black King. So we see a capture on H5. Quickly, Vincent steals back this knight, and now all of a sudden, knight F3 check, queen G4 check. There are all sorts of issues for the White King. David, no defenders in front of it.
0 defenders, 0 protection. The pawn shelter has been stripped away, all at the cost of just a rook for knight. Knight F3 looks like a killer. I don't even see any moves here, Robert. Like, everything I want to play, it walks into a knight fork or knight check. At the very minimum as well, the black queen and knight wreak havoc together. It looks like Vincent is about to win. In the other match, though, Robert, it looks like Serrana in control. Grishuk looks devastated. He's a pawn down, Grishuk with black. Serrana, is he going to take Division 3?
It looks to be the case. The evaluation bar is going up, up, and away, and it's getting away from Grishuk. Although, it keeps going on a seesaw. The problem for Grishuk is he needs to win. So you can repeat moves if you're Serrana to win Division 3. And Grishuk, he's in trouble. It's hard to choose either game, David, because Levon's in trouble, Grishuk's in trouble. It looks like the youngsters are going to come out on top.
Yeah, the younger generation, just in this marathon battle. And let's go back to this game in Division 2. So much at stake. Vincent about to secure his place in Division 1 next time. But there's a mate threat. Watch out for queen takes G7. Checkmate. He guards and he attacks at the same time. The White King walking. Ooh, it feels like into trouble. The Black Knight can come into D3. There we go. Threatening checkmate in 1 himself. Rook takes F2 is a massive threat. The White Rook as well, also hanging. Robert, this might be...
It's over.
There we go. Vincent Keymer wins Division 2.
And you see Vincent, finally, his emotions